Anita Abu Bakar, President, Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association. A little bit of background about Anita, right, is that Puan Anita Abu Bakar wasn't envisioning a future in mental health awareness when she spent her earlier days in the banking corporate field, spanning a period of over 10 years. Today, Anita is the founder and president of the Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association, a mental health advocacy and peer support group based in Malaysia. As Anita was born and raised overseas, she subsequently pursued her tertiary education in the States, obtaining her bachelor's degree in computer information systems, minoring in management information systems. Anita pursued her career path as an investment banker upon returning her return to Malaysia actually. And in addition to that, she also holds an MBA in Islamic Banking and Finance from International Islamic University of Malaysia. And with that, I would like to bring Anita up on stage.
Hello, Aisha. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm well. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the session.
Pleasure's all mine. And of course, I know you are also, excited to moderate this session.
Yeah.
And with that, I will bring up the panelists as well up on the stage to join you. All right, there you go. So, of course, with that being said, I hand.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Anita. I will be your moderator today. And joining me with today's discussion, burnout is on the rise in the legal industry. What can you do about it? So before we begin, let me first introduce our line of panelists for today. And our first panelist is Mr. HR Dipendra, partner from Koh Dipendra Jeremiah Law. Mr. Dipendra is an advocate and solicitor with over 20 years of experience. His expertise includes advisory work, strategy, advocacy, and conducting hearings and trials before all courts and arbitral tribunals. Mr. Dipendra was also the chairman of the Kuala Lumpur Bar Committee between 2013 and 2015 and is an 8-term Malaysian Bar Council Committee member. Mr. Dipendra is a graduate of the University of London External Program and holds a Master's in Law from the London School of Economics and Political Science. How are you, Mr. Dipendra?
I am good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And our second panelist, here with us, we have Ms. Josephine Tiew, a legal associate with NIK HUSSAIN Partners. Ms. Josephine is the Co-Secretary General of the Welfare and Social Justice Subcommittee under the KL Bar's Committee's Young Lawyers Committee. She practices at NIK HUSSAIN Partners, Kuala Lumpur, with a focus on civil and commercial disputes involving insolvency exercises, shareholder disputes, strata management matters, and industrial relation issues. She also has an active portfolio of chancery, probate, and administration matters in which she represents major trust corporations and individuals alike. Don't really know much about it. Josephine, passionate about the well-being of young working adults, hence why you're here with us today. And Josephine believes that raising awareness and spreading positivity in social environment aids mental health issues amongst young adults. And during the weekends, she enjoys the great outdoors but does not shy away from an excellent book while sipping a cup of tea. Oh, my kind of girl. Yeah. How are you, Josephine?
Hello, good morning, everyone. So glad to be here to be able to share a point or two. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion later.
Me too, definitely. So thank you so much, folks. Okay, so for today's topic of discussion, this is actually something very close to my heart. I give a lot of talks on stress management, stress optimization, which includes burnout, and also the importance of mental health. So very happy to be moderating the session today, listening from other and various stakeholders, of course. So very, very happy to be here. I think this topic, Dipendra and also Josephine, is not only a topic relevant to the legal profession, but very related during this pandemic hit. These struggles are very real, and burnout is something that if we do not take care of it, it can lead to other complications, increases the risk of getting a mental health disorder, and so today's discussion is definitely crucial, and hopefully both of you can shed some light on this issue. So in our context of discussion today, when we talk about burnout, burnout is very real. It's more serious than just being tired at the end of the day. It is actually included in the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon. Is not classified as a medical condition, but is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress. So when we talk about burnout, it's usually related to work, and so something needs to be done about it. And so I will go straight to the discussion. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dipendra, I will begin with you. Okay, so the legal industry is considered high pressure, job due to the intense workload, paperwork, the magnitude of the cases handled, time-wise, effort taken, especially now being in the pandemic. Earlier, Mr. Dipendra, you were saying you find it challenging because you're a physical kind of person. You want the face-to-face human touch kind of, engagement with your clients. I was just wondering, you've been in this industry for more than 20 years, 21 years to be exact. How has this journey been for you? Have you, ever experienced burned out or mental health struggles? And what do you do to manage the load and, have a good, effective work-life balance? How has that been for you, Dipendra?
Well, good morning, everyone. Yes, first, let me just say that I'm very glad that events are, giving emphasis to issues like this. I spoke on mental health not too long ago. Today, it's on burnout, and I'm very happy these issues are being talked about. When I started practice 20 years ago, people rarely talked about burnout. In fact, it was seen as a sign of weakness.
Yes.
If you complained about burnout, you were looked at in a different way. On many occasions, it would seem as if it would affect your promotion chances, your chances of moving up in a firm, getting work and stuff like that. But so a lot of people suppressed it. They kept it to themselves, and eventually they either self-medicated. They took up all kinds of nefarious habits, which didn't help them over time. I've been an employer, or at least on my own, the last maybe 13 years. And before that, of course, an employee. Being an employer, because you are able to switch on and switch off.
Yes.
And I found myself doing that on a number of occasions. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't. At various points in my legal career, question is the right word, because sometimes you're exhausted, you're listless, you just don't want to work. And early on, I thought it was a medical condition. And I used to go for tests, and doctors would say, "Look, you're fine. Your blood work is good, you're healthy." But doctor said, maybe you're just stressed, and they would just tell you, take a few days off, chill, go do something else.
Right.
But what I found helpful throughout my legal career is, of course, immersing myself in an alternate hobby or an alternate endeavor.
Okay.
So for the longest time, being someone who likes the law, I ran my own NGO for a while. I got involved in the bar council. People think it's crazy, and people think it's stupid, but actually, in some weird way, it is a little, therapeutic of some sort, because I could take my mind away from work stress, focus on something that I like very much, and it became a feel-good. For want of a better word, a feel-good initiative, a feel-good endeavor at the end of the day. So I continued doing that as and when. because I expected nothing from it except joy, and all of this has guided me over the last 15 to even 20 years. But I must also add that it's important to take up a physical hobby, whether it's hiking or whether it's team sports or whether it's individual sport. You have to be disciplined enough to do it, because that whole exercise thing does help dealing with the toughness of practice. And I will just complete by saying it is true, legal practice is very stressful. Josephine will certainly attest to it. Clients are very demanding.
Yep.
You work in the service industry, there is really no fixed time. If you have a major hearing or a trial coming up in 2 days, you have to work 3 a.m. in the morning. It is what it is. But, it's a question of managing work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dipendra. I'm actually hearing a lot of points by you, and you're exactly right. Even if we talk about 5-6 years ago, even mental health wasn't something that we discussed openly. The pandemic has certainly helped normalize this discussion very much, and even for me, a lot of employers do reach out to us, engaging with mental health NGOs, professionals, in getting some help and interventions for employees in the workplace. So I'm hearing that there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of fear to reach out when we are indeed going through something. And like you said, in the legal industry, being a professional, we have to have it all together or portray it as such. Or at the end of the day, we're human beings. We all go through whatever struggles it might be, and especially today. We're all going through a same storm, but obviously different boats, and something needs to be done about it. And thank you so much for sharing, these important tips, Mr. Dipendra. So investing in hobby, we talk about this a lot. It's very helpful. Making yourself useful, doing things that you're passionate about. It really induces a lot of good hormones, in actual truth. And it really helps. And of course, exercising. Exercising is actually one of the key components to both taking care of your physical well-being and mental well-being as well. So thank you so much, Mr. Dipendra, for sharing that. Okay, over to you, Josephine, representing the young lawyers. How has your experience been so far, being in the legal industry? Is it as brutal that the outsiders perceive, people like me perceive the legal industry being, this really harsh, brutal industry where, you guys really work long hours, heavy workloads? How have you been coping so far, Josephine?
Thank you, Anita. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on this platform this morning. For me, my journey has been a bit more unconventional compared to other peers of my age, I would say. I started off as an intern, then I moved on to becoming a pupil, now I'm a legal associate. So you could say I went through all stages lawyer to be would go. So from the very lowest on the rung of the ladder right up to the twilight zone, I would call it, between a paralegal opinion. You're kind of like a lawyer, but not really, because you have the qualifications and the qualities as well as the skill set, but you don't have your paper cert. I call it your long call cert that allows you to practice, or we call it the practicing certificate. So I've been on both sides of the end, so I'm able to gauge how it was back then before you qualify, and then once you've been called to the bar and you're officially recognized and called as a solicitor on Malaysia. So in the beginning of my journey, it was more picking up the ropes, learning the skill set, able to become a competitive as well as competent lawyer. Because it's not just about your hard skills regarding your drafting, your client management, your knowledge of the law, which is all important and well and good, but it's also your interpersonal skills, you being able to relate to your colleagues, to your supervisors, and when you're senior enough, when you deal with clients on your own, how do you view that relationship and maintain it such in a way that it doesn't affect your personal life, but at the same time it advances your business relationship with that. So in the beginning, it was more of, I wouldn't say burnout, but it was more stress because you're new, you're not familiar with all these things, and it's a lot, and it's a very steep learning curve. I think I speak for most young lawyers who are out there, from privilege up until your first 2-3 years of practice, it's a steep learning curve. Because what you learn in law school or in university is merely theory. It's not the practical stuff. Yes, you may know some of the procedural laws, but when it comes to practice, okay, how do you advise? Because clients want practical tips. They don't just want to know what is the law. They don't care what the law is. They just want that, okay, this is my problem. How can you solve it? And then add on the time constraints, add on the deadlines, add on the expectations, and it can get quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
So it has been a very up and down journey, I would say. Very much of a roller coaster, and you're really not sure what you're going to get. Because when you think that you're going to go this way, and then the next thing you know, whoa, it goes down into that little drop in that roller coaster, and then it goes right up again. So for me, it has been much of a roller coaster actually. And I agree with Dipendra. There are days where I do question myself: why am I doing this again? Why am I taking on this stress? Sacrificing time to give out the quality kind of work that you do. At the end of the day, it's also the satisfaction you get when you provide a practical solution and the client is able to resolve their legal disputes. And when you see families reconcile together, or when you see disputes being resolved in an amicable method, it doesn't have to be in court; it can be out of court as well. And there is a sense of satisfaction like that. So, still ongoing. I'm only in my third year of practice, so yeah.
How do you cope though, Josephine?
How do I cope? I primarily cope by initially, this is something that's more of a self-actualization for me. I realize I'm a person who likes to keep things inside. I just, deal with it and then just move on. And then I realize that it's not healthy for me. So nowadays, my strategy is that, okay, recognize that I'm getting stressed. I know when I get anxious and when I get tense. When I receive certain notifications, work notifications after work hours, and it's like very tense inducing. So what I'll do is I'll talk to my supervisors, I'll talk to my colleagues. There will be days where you rant about it, but there's also times where I'm being realistic. Okay, these are the stuff on my plate. I am not able to cope with this kind of tight deadlines that we pose. Can we work our way around it? So it's more of managing client expectation, managing my supervisor and boss's expectations of the work life, of the timeline as well. So for me, it's talking, ranting, also being more vocal about how I'm feeling and how am I able to cope if I'm not able to cope. And last but not least, it's really to take time off on the weekend, even if it's just an hour or two, to just do absolutely nothing related to law. For example, mentioned hiking. Unfortunately, MCO does not allow me to hike as much. So I've resorted to indoor exercising. This has been my coach, personal trainer for the last
many as well.
Yeah, for me, it's, for 1.5 years now. And yeah, it has helped create that balance.
Nice, Josephine. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was very insightful. I'm taking in so many points here. It's interesting that you started off as an intern, so really being on both sides of it. I think that really helps you in navigating through this industry as well. Very, very good. And then, of course, I think in whatever industry that we're all in, it is the best way to learn is, of course, learning on the job. Having that experience is very, very beneficial. And of course, another thing that you mentioned, it's also very meaningful, right? When we do this job, being in the service line, I'm the same way. When we do this, when we help others, we see them resolving their problems or issues. It's very meaningful and beneficial at the same time. And of course, like you said, having that open discussion is very important, especially when you feel so overwhelmed, and managing these expectations of both from your supervisors, from the clients as well, and creating that boundary at the same time and being realistic as well. And of course, then having that weekend off, going for exercise, hiking, etc. Thank you so much, Josephine. That was very, very insightful. Okay, I'm going to Dipendra next for round two. Okay, we've got 25 minutes left. Dipendra, for my next question to you, what advice would you give to the new and aspiring lawyers before they enter the workforce? Maybe some recommendations and lessons that you can impart so that they are more prepared, more resilient coming in to manage it more effectively, so that it doesn't, compromise their mental well-being at the same time.
Oh, this is a tough one. it is a tough one for this reason, because there is no fixed template for young pupils or even young lawyers to take. I suppose perhaps it might be a little controversial, but I think the better answer would be that for a pupil or a young lawyer, number one, to have zero expectations to go in, and at least spend your pupillage period or even the first 2 years um, rolling with the punches, as it were. The reason I say this is because it's always better for a young lawyer or a pupil to make a decision which could potentially be career changing or life altering, having seen the worst, rather than making decisions based on what external resources have told you, oh, it's going to be stressful, it's going to be this, and therefore you avoid it at the outset. It's better to go in, face the stress, because you're still young, and then if you find that, look, this is not for me, I don't like this, I don't like the work environment, I don't like the work culture, you then move on to other options, whether you want to go in-house, but actually in-house is also not a walk in the park. In-house is equally stressful, and I can tell you why. It's because a lot of companies now, they want to rely less on external lawyers, and so they expect their in-house lawyers to be more than just a normal lawyer. So you are expected to know a variety of areas, and that adds to the stress. But I think it's better for a pupil and a young lawyer, before going in, a little bit of homework needs to be done. And I think when they approach an interview, they shouldn't be afraid to ask, not be aggressive about it, but to also ask during the interview, look, if I have a problem, what is your process? Who do I talk to? Do you have a system in place that would encourage me to, deal with any problems that I have, whether it's stress, whether it's mental health, whether it's burnout, and things like that. From the face of it, I accept the fact that a lot of employees will say, what a bizarre question that you're asking, and perhaps this person has got some issue and I shouldn't even employ him or her. But perhaps speak very candidly. You don't have to say that, look, I potentially could suffer from all of this, but I think it's important for them to say, look, you have a system in place that would help me if and only if I have this problem. So those are the things that I would recommend. In fact, I have more to say about what the Bar Council could do and what firms or law firm owners could do, because I think change needs to come from top down. You cannot look at a young lawyer and a pupil and say, well, you have to deal with this, you have to deal with that. I'm going to give you yoga classes or access to yoga or a gym membership and you'll be fine. It's a painful conversation for law firm owners to have, but I think it is important that they do have this so that the system is already in place for a young pupil and a young lawyer who enters into the profession into as well. This is a conversation for young for law firm owners and also the Bar Council as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dipendra. So having the system in place is definitely important. I think it also it really helps when someone new coming into a workplace, whatever industry it might be, when they know and realize that their employees are supportive not only of their physical well-being but mental well-being as well. Because we see a lot happening in Malaysia where reasonable accommodation and adjustments are not necessarily given to people with mental health challenges, burnout, etc. from this nature per se. And of course,
sorry for that. The other thing I should mention is this. The problem with a lot of law firms is that almost 85% of law firms in Malaysia are small firms.
Okay.
So they have less than 5 lawyers or less than 6 lawyers in their firm. So a lot of law firms are not incentivized to have the systems in place. For them, they feel that, look, if you have a problem, you can go. I'll just get someone else to replace you.
I agree.
But that is not the solution.
Correct.
To addressing the problem. So that is something that the Bar Council as a whole needs to sort of slowly drive change.
Right, correct. Like you mentioned, it needs to begin from the top. And hopefully through today's discussion, something can be done about it. We would like to, of course, via conversations to spur actions at the end of the day. And like you were saying, for the young lawyers, when you come in having zero expectation, but of course learning, on the job. I think it's so interesting when you said being, a lawyer in house where the stressors are higher because you're expected to know a variety of areas. And I'm guilty of that as well, because I've got a good friend who is a lawyer, and anything pertaining to legal, whatever area it might be, I will typically ask her, and she will tell me, okay, let me ask my other friend, let me ask my other friend. So I think that's absolutely true. Thank you so much, Dipendra, for highlighting that. Okay, I'm going to go to you, Josephine. So my question is, you have been, in practice for a couple of years now, several years. What are some red flags that are considered a norm in the law firm that indirectly takes a toll on the mental health of associates? What would you say? That are considered norm but actually impacts mental health of the young lawyers especially.
That's a very loaded question.
Yeah,
I think
it's a insightful question to ask. Yeah.
I think right off the bat, the first one is inevitable is the average working hours of most lawyers, young lawyers. Not just young lawyers, I think it's across the board from pupils all the way up to senior associates as well as even so proprietors and managing partners as well. It's the expectation to be on, like on the ball, be available 24/7. First of all, especially now in times of pandemic and connectivity is technology connects us all.
But on the average, what is the working hours like, Josephine?
Yes, I was about to go
I
into that.
don't know. I'm not from Bali.
So the KLR recently did a survey on mental health needs among the practitioners in Kuala Lumpur. Most of the respondents are between 30 to 5 years of practice, and then the second group were those in 5 to 10 years, and followed up by the senior lawyers and whatnot. So about 31%, which is about 114 respondents, mentioned that they're working an average of 41 to 50 hours per week, followed by the next one, which is an average of 51 to 60 hours per week. That's about 52 respondents, averaging about 22%. And then on the higher end of the scale, it's slightly less, thankfully, about 61 to 70 hours, so about 16%, which is about 59 respondents. So you could say that we definitely work more than 40 hours, the average 40-hour week, and this could range up to 70 hours sometimes, depending on the requirements or demands for the particular file or whatnot. And it's normal. It's considered normal. In fact, it mind boggles me that having little sleep and having X amount of working hours beyond that 40-hour work week is worn as a badge of honor. Like, hey, I only had 5 hours of sleep, I have to come to office 8 a.m. And today, this week, I worked 60 hours, And then I was like, wow, wow, wow. It's not something to be proud of, you guys.
Exactly.
It's not something to be proud of. In fact, it's something to be questioned. Like, why are we working so long hours? Is it are we being inefficient during our work hours, or are we so bogged down with client meetings and traveling time discussions that it eats up during your working hours that you have no choice but to work after work hours? So these are the questions which are not being addressed. It's just like, wow, you work so long, you're very hardworking, are you? Wow, you don't take a sleep, obviously you're very stressed, you're very productive and it's very busy, and it's very good to go on a good track kind of thing. And it's quite worrisome, especially for me. I mean, yes, I understand we do need to put in the hours, and yes, we are told that being in the legal profession is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We do need to put in the hours, just like how a pilot needs nearly 1,000 hours, or 100,000 hours or something like that before he's able to fly. So in the same way, you need to put in that number of hours to be good, to be competent, to build up your skill set. Yes, I do not negate that. It does come with experience, but the question is, in your hours that you put in, are you being effective in those hours, or is it just waffling with time because of all the other things that you're inundated with, that you're not as efficient as you should be? So then it leads to the second one, the workload. Is it being segregated proportionally? Let's say in a small firm of 5 lawyers, for example, we have like one managing senior partner and then required 4 LAs, for example. Yes, different LAs have different capabilities and portfolios, but is the workload being segregated proportionally? Or if, let's say, this particular legal associate has like 10 active files, and then your other one has only one active file. And then in each file are there applications which would be more demanding, for example, one application after another. So unfortunately, I can't speak for those who are in criminal practice or in corporate practice because I came from a general litigation background, and civil practice is very much timeline based. So, for example, you file your writ or statement of claim, which is the first document you file to start the claim. You have about 14 days to serve it. You have 14 days to enter your appearance, then another 14 days to serve your defense, and then 14 days, 14 days, 14 days. So if you let's say only for one file, if you have 10 files for the same kind of timeline, you just get very backlog. So segregation of work, is it proportionate? Then my last point about red flag is the lack of respect for personal time.
Okay.
Precisely would be first is the expectation to be on most of the time, and then when you get calls on weekends or when you get calls from clients, for example, after work hours, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., when is your cut-off time?
Right.
Yeah, and also, what if you get calls from the supervisor or bosses? 6 p.m., 7 p.m., still okay, maybe? When it comes to 9:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m., 1 a.m., do you pick up? But the question is, why still awake at 1 a.m.? But still, do you pick up or do you answer? Do you even look at it? So these are the things that inevitably, it's always the little things that add up and then eventually becomes the last straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right,
Precisely these three things would be
right. So you mentioned the working hours, the workload, and lack of respect of personal time. I think one interesting point, Josephine, that you highlighted here that I caught is we tend to think or perceive that the more we work or the longer hours we put in, the more productive we're going to get. When in actual fact, it actually lands us to what we say the low zone of delusion. Because what will happen is you will end up in the burnout zone, and which can eventually, increase the risk of falling into depression, as an example. So I think that's important red flags for especially the young lawyers that are listening to take note, and those of you that are interested to pursue later on. But hopefully that doesn't hinder you, of course, Mr. Dipendra, from entering the legal industry as a whole. Thank you so much, Josephine, for sharing that. And those of you that have questions, please post your questions, and I can post the questions after this to both our panelists. So approaching the last round for today's discussion, Dipendra, to you. As we are approaching, of course, the third year, coming to the third year of this pandemic, just imagine we're done with 2 years now. Many companies are preparing for the hybrid working model. Many companies as well, actually, in other industries that have opened up, total 100% people are returning to work completely. In view of the legal industry, though, what is the ideal work arrangement for lawyers in times of the pandemic that can help prevent these mental burnout, considering the massive, again, amounts of workloads expected, Mr. Dipendra?
I think working from home is here to stay, and I think it should be an option for young lawyers. I adopt the same in my office, although strangely my juniors prefer to come to the office, but that option is open to them. That option is open to them to work from home. But Josephine raised a very, very good point. It is employers' respect for personal time.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for bosses to, think that because you're working from home, you're available 24/7.
Right.
And there is a danger in that because as an employee, no one sees it from their point of view, and they're always in a heightened state. My boss will text me at 10 o'clock saying, "Oh, I need this answer by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm going to meet the client. Can you do some general research? Can you get this letter out quickly?" So I think again, employers need to know boundaries. Sometimes I'm guilty of that. I accept the fact that I'm not perfect, but I find myself these days, I don't call. It's always by way of WhatsApp. And I try to preface it by saying, look, no need to answer now,
Right.
because as an employer, sometimes I may have an epiphany at 10 o'clock at night,
Yes.
and I don't want to forget about it. So I will text my junior who's working. No need to answer. We deal with it tomorrow. Just set out some of my thoughts and leave it at that. So
Right.
they don't have to deal with it. They don't have to work. They don't have to give me
Answer
enough.
immediately. Right.
So I try my best to respect that. If it's absolutely urgent, if it's really something I can't avoid, I will of course have the courtesy of saying, look, I'm terribly sorry to call you at 9 o'clock, but it's always a message first. If they don't answer, they don't answer. There could be a variety of reasons. Maybe it's family, or there's some personal thing that they need to attend to. But that needs to be um, something which firms encourage.
Right.
And if we don't do that, then it's always going to be that little unequal position and a bit of abuse going on. But I want to also say this, and I find this to be an interesting thought. I have to disagree with Josephine slightly. Unfortunately, the legal industry, like any other professional services,
Right.
we cannot be confined to working from 9 to 5. Clients generally
Right.
do need that. But what I think, instead of looking at the number of hours you put in a week, the better way to do it is fine. At certain points in your career or certain points in time, because of the urgency of work and so on, you may have to work maybe 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. But you must then compensate by giving time off, reasonable time off. You say, look, we've been working very hard in the last 2, 3 weeks. We've accomplished what we need to do. Take 2 days off.
Right.
No need to record this history. Take 2 days off. If you want to come in later, you want to go and do something else, go and do it. Not going to trouble you at all. So that is a conversation or a process which needs to be put in place. And I think here's where junior lawyers can sort of like bridge the gap by having a frank conversation with their boss. I like to believe that most of the bosses I know are not unreasonable people. You go and tell them, look, boss, really, this file has been taking the life out of me. We've put in so much hours. Can I please take a day off? I want to just, garden, do something else, walk aimlessly in a shopping mall, whatever, play with my pet, whatever,
Right.
just do it. And I think most bosses will be sympathetic.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dipendra. I think one of the things that I'm hearing from you is I do the same thing. Actually, I'm an employee. I've been an employee for a very long time, and I do the same thing. If something crosses my mind, I will put it into the WhatsApp or email. But I tell them we don't have to answer it immediately. We can deal with it tomorrow. I do that as well, and I do tell my staff members it's because if I don't put it right there, I will definitely forget it sometimes, and I just want to get it off my mind, right? So you want to declutter it as well, and you want to plan ahead. So that's also one of the reasons why I do that as well. So I can totally relate to you, Dipendra. And like you were saying, have that conversation with your boss. I think it's very important. I think rewarding yourself, having pat yourself on the back, taking that time off, it's very important. I think what you just shared, this is something that we practiced, Dipendra, when I was working in the States, because a lot of the work that we did were more project based. So once we completed the project, our bosses will give us time off, 3-4 days, and we get to do whatever that we want. We weren't nobody disturbed us, and then we come back more focused, with more clarity and motivated to work and help others, of course. And of course, being in the service line, it can get overwhelming, and we do need support from not only our bosses but of course our colleagues as a whole. So thank you so much, Dipendra, for sharing that. Okay, Josephine, one last question to you before we wrap up. Representing the young lawyers, in your opinion, does providing support resources for the associates a good investment for the firm? Would you say, will it help boost interest in getting the job done, or a leeway to add more workload for the lawyers? And I did prepare that question. Go ahead, Josephine.
Thank you, Puan Anita. I think yes, it does help to have that support system there, and also that especially the counseling or the availability to be able to access those services. I think it's important to recognize as I have a discussion to recognize that it is real. Yes, I may not like to talk about it because it involves okay, we want to be problem solvers, not to be more so that it's not an issue. It would help to, or I'm not being disregarded just because I am being like that. And I'm sure most of us don't choose to be like that. It's usually a host of reasons and circumstantial such that you become like that. No one chooses to be burned out. I mean,
Right.
who wants to be burned out? It's not a nice place to be in, and
Right.
and when once you're in it, it's also quite a tough journey to get out of it because
Right.
then you question your why, and in more severe cases, you question your reason for being and living, as a whole, and that's a very serious topic as well. As to whether it becomes a leeway, to add more work to the thing, I think there needs to be a change of this perception perspective as well, because lawyers are firms' assets.
Right.
Have to think about it. They are your assets. If you don't invest in them, if you don't take care of them, yes, they may up and leave, and you can find another. But then it becomes like just being used chattel, or they're easily replaceable, they're dispensable. And I can just get another one off the street. I mean, there's so many law graduates after all. But the thing is, you want to create quality services. You want to create a legal profession that is full of thriving professionals. You don't want them to be like half dead most of the time, whether internally or externally. Like how when you see a young lawyer, a young girl, and enthusiasm, and then 2-3 years down the lane in practice, and then just they're like the life is just sucked out of them, and
Right.
it's also very concerning that most of them leave in their second, third, fourth year of practice. Not many progress on to become senior lawyers. You consider senior once you hit your 7 years in the bar. So after 7 years you can call the bar. Not many go past that threshold. And the question is like, okay, perhaps it's the work to remuneration ratio, which is a bit slow, unfortunately, in the legal profession. And two, perhaps it's also workforce type of so ambitions. But most of the time, it's often the environment in which they're in. So if we could address the issues that the environment and control as employers, the kind of environment that allows for young lawyers to thrive in a healthy manner. Of course, you need to know the difference between being lazy and being burnt out as well. Although the symptoms do overlap, but be honest with yourself, be kind to yourself in a sense that, okay, all right, I'm having an issue, let me address it to my employer. And employers needs to have that empathy to empathize and not just think the worst of them. I think there's a term called positive sentiment override or something, where you think the best of the person, and when they do something, it reinforces your best beliefs of them instead of everything's wrong. Everything they do is, see, this person is a bad person, or is being lazy, or being, unproductive and not. So have that empathy and no, not be is
Thank you so much, Josephine. That was so relevant. And what I'm hearing is we really need to hold space and come from that place of employees with um, you know but then I think that we have progress in a way that even for me, I hear a lot of my the younger generation are more vocal in that sense. So now being the older generation per se, we understand better, we've got more insights, so it's now more of getting that action in place. So hopefully through conversations like today, improvements can happen where we support not only the physical well-being but mental well-being of all employees. This is the hope. Thank you so much, Josephine, for sharing that. I don't see any questions at the moment. and we are at 10:46 right now. So I think I will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Mr. Dipendra. Thank you so much, Josephine. I've learned so much just from being here for 45 minutes. I really look forward to have such conversations again with all of you, and hopefully those that are listening and tuning in benefited from the panel discussion today. And hopefully you guys will stay on for the rest of the ASEAN Digital Legal Summit. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita, Josephine, and Dipendra. That I think that was a great discussion, that you guys had earlier on. And actually, echoing to what President Grant mentioned yesterday, right? It all comes back to talent management. We talked about digitalization, right? At the summit, but I think it's not addressing mental health issues, especially to young lawyers. Yes, that's the reason we have this topic, to get the conversation started, right? And hopefully all the firms will start looking into it.
Yes.
So with that being said, we are going to take a break right now before move on to the next session.